Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala rasulihil kareem. So now we have a few lessons left. These are all quite easy. A lot of it is in the Bayquniya. And is this not very technical, very simple stuff. So Siyaghul Ada, what does Siyaghul Ada mean? The words that the Rawi uses to narrate the hadith. Haddathana, akhbarana, an. Okay? So, again, وَصِيغُ الْأَدَاءِ سَمِعْتُ. Yes? وَحَدَّثَنِي ثُمَّ. He put ثُمَّ here. ثُمَّ أَخْبَرَنِي وَقَرَأْتُ عَلَيْهِ ثُمَّ. So he's got a category. You see the ثُمَّ? So that means it's a new category. ثُمَّ قُرِئَ عَلَيْهِ وَأَنَا أَسْمَعْ ثُمَّ أَنْبَأَنِي ثُمَّ نَاوَلَنِي ثُمَّ شَافَهَنِي ثُمَّ كَتَبَ إِلَيَّ ثُمَّ عَنْ وَنَحْوَهَا. So saying these are the sigha that you will find in the books of hadith. You will find up until here very, very common. You'll find here sometimes, and these are rare. And this is obviously the most common, especially in the mutaqaddimun, the earlier, the ending parts of the chain. Okay? Now, one opinion is that all the same. Whether you say sami'tu or haddathani or akhbarani or qara'tu, nothing, it makes no difference. I mean the first few, they all, not obviously wa ana aqra, but wa anba'ani or haddathani, kulluha sawa. Even in the mutaqaddimun, the it wasn't like a, but some have said no, it's all different. This is in the mutaakhirin, the later scholars. Because again, like this thing logically, when Aisha radiyallahu ta'ala heard hadith, she didn't say, oh, haddathani Rasulullah, as-sami'tu Rasulullah. There's a difference between sami'tu and haddathani. You get what I'm saying? Later, as later things go down, then they do what? Then they start to get a bit more technical and a bit more what? Codified, etc. فَالْأَوَّلَانِ لِمَنْ سَمِعَ وَحْدَهُ مِنْ لَفْظِ الشَّيْخِ. So he's saying here, al-awwalan. What's the sami'tu and haddathani. So in later scholars, what they done, they made this code, this kind of, there was that. If the sheikh narrates to you, so you say sami'tuhu, or you say haddathani, that means what? The sheikh's enunciation, his actual wording, his actual sounds, I heard that. For in jama'a or in jumi'a, they said jama'a in my copy, but for in jumi'a, if it's made plural, and instead of saying sami'tu, say sami' na or haddatha na. فَمَا غَيْرِهِ, that means that it was a class, it was more than one of us. So sami'tu, I myself alone heard. Haddathani, the sheikh himself narrated to me. And haddathana, he narrated to us. Haddathana. To us, not us. Okay, فَالْأَوَّلَانِ. Yes, so فَالْأَوَّلَانِ are these two. Again, the later scholars, the earlier scholars, like the closer to Sahaba's time, the less technical it is. And the later, some said it's different, some say it's the same. Okay? وَأَوَّلُهَا أَسْرَعُهَا وَأَرْفَعُهَا فِي الْإِمْلَاءِ. Now, this is sami'tu or haddathani, which was better? Huh? Why? Because I heard haddathani, he haddathani, but I was sleeping. I was dozing off. I wasn't paying attention. Sami'tu, and I heard. So again, is this being very, but again, the earliest scholars, they never looked at these things very like, so in the books of hadith, just an aside thing, a lot of Ibn Hajar stuff we mentioned here, a lot of the stuff in his book, I point out some of them, he's mentioned things that are not like classical or the earliest scholars haven't done. So that's why people have written nukat. So it's a very famous book, people have written nukat on this book that he said this, but it's not really this, it's not really this, it's a bit of issues. So again, he's saying asra'uha wa arfa'uha. But if you have sami'tu wa haddatha in like Bukhari or earlier, like the higher chain, they wouldn't really, yes? Okay. Continuing now. So we had the first two. والثالث والرابع. والثالث والرابع. الثالث والرابع. The Thalith and the Rabi'. لمن قرأ بنفسه فإن جمع فكالخامس. If you say here أخبرني قرأت عليه, that means what? That I read. So basically, I knew of his hadith. Before class, I wrote the hadith down. Then I went to him and I read the hadith. I just your hadith. He said, "Naam, yes, yes, yes." Like proofread books. So I know his hadith. So let's say, for example, you have my al-Wusta. So you know the Wusta. You get a copy of the Wusta. You'll write it out, and then you come and read to me. I'll compare it with my copy and I say, "Naam, naam, 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 naam." I'll make sure it's thing, and it's done. Hadith transmitted. So that means أخبرني and قرأت عليه means that was what happened. Basically, he was reading unto me, and I was reading to him, and he was approving it. Yes, that's what? Yes? You following? That's for 3 and 4. And if it's أخبرنا and قرأنا عليه. What does that mean? ثم قرئ عليه وأنا أسمع. What does that mean? قرئ عليه وأنا أسمع? Someone else was reading and asma. So if you say أخبرنا, that means somebody was reading and I was hearing. I wasn't reading, but I was listening. وقرأت قرأنا عليه, it's the same thing. You following? فكالخامس, like the fifth. So if you say أخبرنا, so number 5 is أخبرنا and قرأ, yeah, أخبرنا. Yeah, sorry. So سمعت and حدث is he read to us. Sorry, yeah, he read to us. أخبرنا وقرأنا عليه يا قرئ عليه وأنا نسمع is what? The Shaykh is reading. Because two possibilities, isn't it? You following? Yes? So one is قراءة الطالب على الشيخ, and one is قراءة الشيخ على الطالب. Now which is better? Different possibilities, isn't it? Some say if the Shaykh reads is more better because you're reading. The other say if the student reads is better because he's reading and the Shaykh can correct his mistakes. So ikhtilaf. Yes? But this happened a bit later on. In the early Sahaba Tabi'un, there was mostly verbal transmission. And then after that, from later Tabi'in, is when they start writing it down word to word. ثم أنبأني, then you have أنبأني. Okay, let's go on here. والإنباء بمعنى الإخبار. والإنباء. So أنبأ is the same as what? أخبر. So أنبأني, أنبأنا is also what? قراءة الطالب على الشيخ. Yes, they're saying that if you say أنبأ, it's same as أخبر. And أخبر means what? We read to the Shaykh. حدث سمعت means he read to us. You following? Yes, so والإنباء بمعنى الإخبار. إنباء means to do what? Inform. Okay. إلا في عرف المتأخرين فهو للإجازة كعن. Except in the, so again, in the urf of the mutaakhir, even later, very later scholars, this again, haraka is not correct in this book. I copied it from the internet. Ijaza. So you're saying if you say amba'a, the later scholars, they say amba'a means what? He gave me ijaza. It's not sama'. I didn't read to him. I didn't hear him, but he gave me ijaza. So when you have later scholars, what does mutaakhirin exactly mean? You have to look that up. But later, amba would mean I didn't read to him. He gave me ijaza to narrate this book. Do you understand? Yes. Like an can also mean ijaza. Okay, I'm going to explain an a bit more in detail here. وَأَنْعَنَةُ الْمُعَاصِرِ. What's an'ana? What's an'ana mean? An'ana means what? To narrate using the word an fulanin, an fulanin. So now we have a masla here. What's the meaning of an'ana? So because when you say haddathani, you're either lying or you heard from the Shaykh directly in it. If you get caught lying, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. If you get caught lying, you're kadhib and you'll never be approved of anything, isn't it? So when it says sami'tu and haddathani, that means I've heard directly. Akhbarani, all of these sighas show that what? You were there in that gathering. And it's ihtimal. It means you were there in the gathering and you heard it, or it can also mean what? What can it also mean? That you never heard it but hear from somebody else, somebody's missing in between. So if, for example, you narrated something from Abdullah, and I said, you told me a story of Abdullah. I can say, well, An Abdullah. It's from Abdullah. Not that I heard it from him, but it's from him, through you. So the An has the possibility, isn't it? You following? So when you say An, what happens? So he's saying here, وَأَنْعَنَةُ الْمُعَاصِرِ. What does mu'asir mean? Mu'asir. From mu'asara? They're in the same time, the same era. So what he's saying here, that if there are two rawis, they have rawi A and we have rawi B. Now rawi A, let's say for example, he was 100 to 180, for example. And rawi B was from 130 to 200, for example. Yes? Now if rawi A says wa anba wa anil ba'i anis anil jimi, for example. Now, what would we assume? Is it sama' or is it not sama'? So he's saying here, وَأَنْعَنَةُ الْمُعَاصِرِ مَحْمُولَةٌ عَلَى السَّمَاعِ إِلَّا مِن مُدَلِّسٍ. That if a rawi, like A for example, is in the same era, they overlap, it's possible for them to have heard their mu'asir. We will assume mahmulatun, it will be assumed to be sama'. It will be assumed to be what? That he's heard it. unless illa min mudallisin, unless there is a rawi who is known for tadlis. The rawi is known for tadlis. The rawi, what does he do? He does what? He's not with tadlis. He knows to like skip narrators in between. You following? So this is what he's saying here. This is the this is what the Jumhur have said. Yes? This is where there's a difference between Imam Bukhari rahmatullahi alayhi and Ali al-Madini. The two of them, they say no. We will not assume. So what's the asal? If there's mu'asara, then do we assume we assume by default the mu'asara means the sama with an, or we say no? So is it sama until proven otherwise, or non-sama until proven sama? So Imam Bukhari and Ali Madini rahimahullah, they were very strict. They said no, and not in every hadith, because an is a valid form of transmission. But unless there's somewhere to prove that A has heard from B, and they have met, if you prove it anywhere, then after that is fine. But if there's no proof of them meeting ever, we want to take it as sama. Do you understand? Are you following me? So if I narrate from Ahmad, right, 100 hadith, okay? If all 100 are via an, and there's no textual evidence, no evidence to prove that I've met you, well, obviously in front of me right now, but let's say I didn't meet you, then Imam Bukhari and Ali Madini will say what? Because we haven't seen any proof of them meeting, they're in the same time, they're mu'asir. But because they haven't, there's no proof that he never said haddathana or sami'tu or kuntu ma'ahu fi safarin. There's nothing to say this. We wouldn't assume this. We're not going to assume that it's sama. We'll say somebody is missing from there. If from those 100 hadiths, even if one of them I said sami'tu min Ahmad wa nahnu namshi fi tariq. Now it's proven that we met together, isn't it? Then the other 99 will say, okay, that's going to be what? Sama as well. But you have to, so mu'asara is not sufficient to establish that they've met. And Imam Muslim and the rest of the ulama say once they're in the same era, and Imam Muslim rahmatullahi alayhi refutes this Imam Bukhari's like methodology in his Muqaddimah Muslim quite severely. He's saying as long as they're in the same era, we can assume that they have met. We don't have to have proof that like sami'tu in one hadith. You understand? You got it? You follow me? So that's what he's saying here. That's why he's addressing this mas'ala here very briefly. Wa an anatul mu'asir. If there are two mu'asir, well, the rawi and the marwi anhu, the mu'asir, mahmulatun, it will be understood or interpreted to be sama. Unless the guy is known for doing tadlis. He misses out the rawi on purpose and he does all that tadlis stuff. Then we say, well, no. But if he's not a mudallis, then we say, well, he narrates. His an is enough. Are you following me? And again, because the word an is mushtarak. The word an is used in both ways. It's used for direct and indirect. That's why there's this ikhtilaf regarding this an ana. Yes? Waqila, he's but qila. Who's the qa'id? Who says this? Whose opinion is this? Al-Bukhari. No, Muslim. What? And his Shaykh Ali al-Madini. This is their opinion. What's the opinion? يشترط ثبوت لقائهما ولو مرة وهو المختار. That you must prove that the rawi has met the marwi, and even once. Once you've proven that they met, that's fine. We've not that they met, now we can assume the rest to be, unless it's a mudallis. Are you following? Yes? You following? So, let's unlock this. If you have a rawi and a marwi anhu, and there's no mu'asara, and there's an ana, what's that going to be? Muhammad? You have a rawi and a marwi anhu. A rawi and a marwi anhu. And there's no mu'asara, what's it going to be? Munqati, because they haven't met. If there's a rawi and marwi anhu, they're mu'asir. If you've proven to have met, then everybody agrees what? That the ana will be sama, unless he's known as a mudallis. Are you following? Okay? The next masala we have, the next word that we use after akhbarana, haddathana, qari alayhi wa ana asma. The next word we have is the word mushafaha. Shafaha, yushafi, mushafahatan. What is shafatun mean? Shafun? Lips. Meaning, so wa atlaqu. Atlaqa means to release, meaning they use. When it comes to words, it means to use. Wa atlaqu al-mushafahata. They use the word mushafaha. Shafahani ya shafahtuhu. Fil ijazati al-mutalaffadhi biha. If the ijaza, you give the ijaza by word, I give you ijaza, it's a shafahani. What do you say? What do you say? Shafahani. If you give ijaza, al-mutalaffiz biha, what does that become? What is that becoming? So if you have mushafaha, you use the word mushafaha when the ustad or the shaykh gives you ijaza in his word. وَالْمُكَاتَبَةُ فِي الْإِجَازَةِ الْمَكْتُوبِ بِهَا. If the ijaza is written, so for example, sometimes you have two types of ijaza. One is, you go to him and he says, I give you ijaza to narrate these ahadith. You follow? I give you ijaza to narrate my ahadith I have heard from Fulan Shaykh. That's called what? Mushafaha. Why? He gave you ijaza verbally. I'm living here, you live in another city, another country, and I write to you a letter, or you write to me a letter asking permission, I reply back to you saying, yes, I give you ijaza to narrate my hadith from Fulan. That's called what? Mukataba. So both of these are ijaza. You haven't heard it, or you haven't heard it, or he hasn't read to you, but he gave you ijaza. If the ijaza is verbally, what do you say? Shafahani, shafahtuhu. And if the ijaza is written, what do you call it? Mukataba. Huh? Imba is the same as ikhbar. He read to us, the shaykh read to us. Okay? After that you have what? After you have munawala. What does nawala? لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. To acquire. And munawala is to give somebody so they can acquire. So what does munawala mean? Munawala means the shaykh gives you his book. And say, this is my marwiyat, these are my books, this is my ahadith that I have took from my shaykh fulan. Here, you narrate from me. That's called munawala. What's that called? Munawala. But however, is munawala, what's munawala? So وَاشْتَرَطُوا فِي صِحَّةِ الْمُنَاوَلَةِ. For munawala to be correct, what have the ulama put condition? They have put the condition اقترانها to be together. It has to be joined. بِالْإِذْنِ بِالرِّوَايَةِ. If he gives you the book, he doesn't give you ijazah. It's not counted. What do you have to have? اقترانها بالرواية. اقترانها بالإذن بالرواية. He has to give you permission to narrate the riwayah, to narrate. So if I say here, this is my book, that's not counted. It is my book, narrate from me. This is called what? What is this? This is the riwayah. وَهِيَ أَرْفَأُ أَنْوَاءِ الْإِجَازَةِ. And this is the highest form, because in here, he just wrote to you to narrate. He actually, so these are all ijazah, isn't it? This is ijazah malfuza. This is ijazah, but he gives you ijazah verbally. This is ijazah in writing. This is give you ijazah by giving you the book. When he gives you the book, that's like a solid, isn't it? Like, it's a book, this is my marwiyat. So you say, وَهِيَ أَرْفَأُ أَنْوَاءِ الْإِجَازَةِ. The munawala is the highest stages of what? What's the munawala? The highest stages of what? Of ijazah. You following? Okay. وَكَذَا اشْتَرَطُوا الْإِذْنَ فِي الْوِجَادَةِ. وَكَذَا اشْتَرَطُوا الْإِذْنَ فِي الْوِجَادَةِ. What's wajada you do wijdan mean? To find. So wijada means you find somebody's book. Your dad is a muhaddith. He had his riwayat. And he found his book. Oh, this is what he wrote down. So the ulama, that's why for example, Amr Shu'ayb Nabihi and Jaddihi. That's something that we have. Sometimes wijada, he found a book. Similarly, I think Arith al-Ahwar, I think, I can't remember, he mentioned the Risala Abu Dawood ila Ahli Makkah. He mentioned in there. So some of those riwayat, like you find a book. There's one person, he was married to there's one lady, she was married to a muhaddith. That muhaddith passed away. Was it Abu Dawood? Muqaddimah? Yeah. Muhaddith passed away, and another muhaddith married that lady. And then he got the first muhaddith's books, and he narrated it. That's wijada. He found the book. You follow it? So the ulama didn't approve of wijada, just finding a book. Yes? Because obviously it's ihtimal of maybe, what did he like? Was it his final version, non-final version? Did he hear from a shaykh? Did he just write it or not? Did he write it as to get to read to him? The reading of the letters. You understand? You read it, it could be like, they didn't put dots before in the early times, before you get it. So all of these things have possibilities. So that's why bijada is a lower form. But in there, they're also given a shart. So if you find it, you can find his book, like you got the book. So now he gave it to you, but I'm not sure we get izn in wijada. If you found the book, then izn. But if you found the book, and then you seek permission, you have to have ijaza in wijada. You have to have ijaza, permission in wijada. If not, they don't, like the earlier ulama, that wijada is not really a valid form. Yes? Similarly, fil wasiyya. What's wasiyya mean? يوصيكم الله في أولادكم. Read the whole thing. You never heard properly? No? Yeah, what's wasiyah? A bequest when you're dying. So instead of dying, saying, here, my money is for you, say, here, my hadith are for you. So he says, I'm giving you a wasiyah. So wasiyah bil kitab wa fil i'lam. So if you have wasiyah bil kitab, he writes a letter saying, I'm giving you wasiyah. That is my marwiyah, can narrate on my behalf. Then even then you have to, if you give wasiyah, you have to give wasiyah with ijaza. You have idhn. Are you following me? Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nasalli ala rasulihil kareem. So we discussed yesterday, وَكَذَا إِشْرَةُ الْإِذْنَ فِي الْوِجَادَةِ وَالْوَصِيَّةِ بِالْكِتَابِ وَفِي الْإِعْلَامِ. So if you do wasiyah bil kitab, you do wasiyah that I'm passing away, so give my kitab to so and so. So munawala you give it yourself, and wasiyah you give it after your death. وَفِي الْإِعْلَامِ. Similarly, if you say, well, I have permission from so and so. In all of these scenarios, you have to have idhn. You just can't be giving the book, or you just can't be giving wasiyah. You have to have idhn. I give you permission to narrate. So in all of these cases, وَإِلَّا, otherwise, meaning if the shaykh doesn't give ijaza, then there's فَلَا عِبْرَةَ بِذَلِكَ, then there will be no what? There's not going to be no, there's no i'tibar, it doesn't count. Yes? كَالْإِجَازَةِ الْعَامَّةِ كَالْإِجَازَةِ الْعَامَّةِ, like ijaza, like I give everybody ijaza. Like, that's like Or, لِلْمَجْهُول, I give someone ijaza. Or ma'doom, I give your son ijaza when he's born. I give all your children when they're born ijaza. Yes, there's one person on Twitter, there's one called Musalsal bi Yawm al-Eid. So majority of the narrations happen on the day of Eid. So on Twitter, I give everybody ijaza for this. Yes, does that count or not? Whoever reads this tweet, I give them ijaza. Yes. وَلِلْمَعْدُومِ عَلَى الْأَصَحِ فِي جَمِيعِ ذَلِكَ. All of these, ijaza amma, ijaza ma'doom. He's not even born yet. Yes, I give your great-great-grandchildren ijaza, so they have a very strong, short sanad. Yes. These things don't count. Okay, fi jami'i dhalik. All of these, in none of these, ijaza will be valid. Okay, following? Okay, subhanallah wa bihamdi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta wa nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.